delighted to have a great panel here of folks that come out of the law enforcement community and have very deep backgrounds in both technology and law enforcement, something I spent many years at. So let's just get things going, and let's start with what are some innovations taking place around the cloud, especially with respect to your agency. Rick, if you could start us out.
Sure, Charlie. Thanks a lot. So with ICE, some of the biggest challenges that we had were coordinating with the department. They had data centers and they had a lot of red tape and a lot of constraints that made it difficult for us to deliver solutions. And by moving to the cloud, we've been able to do a lot of innovating in the areas of improving our performance delivery and in pushing capabilities out to the agents and officers. It's been a very, I guess, about 3 years, and we've grown immensely, and we've been able to produce some really good solutions that allow our operational capabilities to protect the officers, get them right down to the mobile devices so that they're able to know what's going on. We're able to get our detention officers the ability to interpret with detainees that don't speak English, and it helps, in their safety and in the detainees' safety. So we've been working very difficult. We've been working very hard to ensure that we automate these deliveries so that we can deliver them more quickly and more safely and more securely. And the cloud's been able to help us accomplish all of that.
Thank you, Rick. Rhett, how about yourself?
Yeah, well, certainly being part of, I guess the ecosystem that our customers depend upon, right, to deliver the mission. We certainly want to bring capabilities to our customers where they need them. So whether they need edge processing video data, maybe they need systems to bring better situational awareness. And just at a base level, I think all of DHS now is leveraging services like Office 365, right, to ease collaboration, productivity, bring capabilities, and bring people together, right, establish better channels of communication. I think there's still work that we need to do to enable better data sharing, maybe intelligence sharing and that type of thing across components, which we are certainly focused on. And then, of course, there's always compliance, right? And there's security aspects too. So bringing native cloud capabilities, but then enabling our customers to connect those to existing, maybe on premises or other cloud platforms, bringing consistency to that, and just continually investing within that, to meet our customers where they need us to be. Yeah.
Thank you. Alex, how about at the DEA?
Thanks, Charlie. I think I would like to echo two things that Rhett and Richard mentioned already is mobility. So cloud access has really delved into an environment that we can pretty much access or at least move our data or information to various locations and minimize things like bandwidth problems or issues reaching the same database or backend systems, no matter where you might be. So being able to expand different types of applications, whether it's your timesheet or whether it's something that is as robust as reaching into like a database at other local law enforcement organizations or in the federal side, being able to do that completely has been an extreme focus for us. Being able to do it securely is also something that also being in the cloud has helped accelerate, is that being able to standardize our security posture across the board. At DEA, we have two types of cloud environments. We have our private internal cloud, and we also have the government cloud locations in various places as well. So we can mimic that environment no matter which one we choose, and the same user experience is given no matter which location your application or your user is trying to access. So those are extreme highlights for us. And then the last piece is being able to moving towards a more cloud native approach or cloud smart approach means that remote access for people, not only just the devices, we were talking about mobility, like mobile devices, things like that, but the people themselves are allowed to move around without the previous problems and issues we ran into, no matter your location. So those are all three big focuses for us.
Great. So I know that you all are in kind of a hybrid or multi-cloud environment. What's kind of your strategy / architecture for how you're stitching all this stuff together, with respect to things like connectivity, perhaps identity management, those kind of things. Can we talk a little bit about that for a minute? Once again, Rick, if you could start us out.
Sure, that's great. I think Alec kind of touched on that a little bit. Achieving parity to the degree that we can in whichever cloud environment we're in is something that is very important to ICE. We want the experience, regardless of the cloud environment, to be similar for our users, and the implementations within each cloud service provider space is different. And so we've been working really hard to achieve that. And I don't know, much like the cloud service providers, it's probably near impossible to achieve parity between the regions and between the cloud service providers. But implementing things like DNS, the cloud native services, Kubernetes, things of this nature can be done fairly easily because the implementation is kind of similar. But then there are other services like serverless, where each service provider implements it differently, and the way that you make things work are going to be completely different in each cloud environment.
Great. Rhett, how about what are you seeing over there at Microsoft?
Yeah, well, I think some of the comments that Alex made in terms of how can we have consistency, right, with their on-premises cloud, right, and other cloud platforms. I think traditionally, especially our government customers, typically not, bleeding edge in terms of embracing all the new stuff, right? There's policy and culture that has to catch up. And I think things like COVID has certainly impacted that, accelerated that. So I think there's definitely opportunities to kind of flip things around to say, well, we're still going to have on-premises type environments or needs. Can we deliver things cloud native that could help us wherever we're running the system, whether it's another cloud provider, whether it's Microsoft Azure, whether it's on-prem. So I think having that consistency driven through cloud native services is one of the key things.
Great. Alex, how about DEA?
So I'll add on and double down on that identity piece is that, again, organizations on the government side have spent a lot of time developing and existing in siloed environments where applications are not aware of other applications and other rights, rules, privileges, and they're all configured independently of each other. Long term, I don't see how any of us, government or not, can be successful long term maintaining that approach. The more devices we're thinking about, not just phones, but now we have body worn cameras. Now we have vehicles that are now equipped with internet devices. You have other IoT devices that have to be managed, used, and configured long term. At the rate that we've grown devices in 2022, we're at a ridiculous amount of devices in comparison to what we had just 5 years ago. Being able to maintain the authentication piece and the authorization to use them locally is not sustainable long term. So that cloud approach, looking at identity solutions and identity management solutions, conditional access solutions that also allow us to move and migrate those kind of capabilities into one centralized point is going to be basically going to be the make or break area for use. And eventually, like Rhett also mentioned, the development and use of modern authentication. I don't want to carry my own identity or ID I don't want the 280 passwords that I have for my personal accounts and then have to go to work and also pick up another 100 or so of things that I have to log into. So ultimately, this is from my perspective, I think that those kind of things are going to go into a huge crash course together eventually in the next 5 years, where I'll be able to be Alex in one spot, and then it will proliferate to other places inside of my office as well as my personal life. But at the end of the day, we just need to be more, we need to simplify that process. And I think that that's what the cloud has given us the ability to do. Another key part, we talked about security before. We talked about being able to look at our landscape and our threat models that we develop. Again, a lot of that information was held extremely close to the vest. It can still be maintained and obfuscated from other groups, or things that we don't want to share can still be removed. But being able to do threat management and then do threat inspection and analysis at a larger scale, I need to know what happens at ICE, that ICE had something that they might be able to help us prevent from in a timely fashion. And I need that to happen before I have to wait for, 25 emails to go back and forth between each group. Because by the time we're seeing now all types of things, ransomware, all those kind of things, those indicators of compromise and those areas of threat, they're going to outrun email. They're going to outrun IMs. They're going to outrun all of those things. And the only way for us to share that kind of information, enriched information in a larger scale, is going to be able to leverage a unified platform that, again, we pick and choose what we want to share, but we can do it in a much more time-efficient fashion.
More and more, it's getting critical, especially in law enforcement and in your all's environment, to have real-time access to information and just this huge volume of processing that's going on, analytics and all that kind of stuff. And so I know a lot of folks are looking at different agencies into edge computing and data at the edge in order to really keep that stuff at the mission owner's fingertips. Can we talk a little bit about the use of those kind of technologies at your agencies? Rick, if you could start us out and let us know how things are moving in that direction at ICE.
Yeah, so our agents have been using edge technologies for a number of years now, and it keeps getting a little bit better. I think that some of the big push has been to ensure that during operations, the agents have the information that they need to accomplish their mission and do it at a very personal level through phones. I think that the science and technology provides a product called the Tactical Awareness Kit, which allows agencies to implement this and share all the phone and video and audio from each officer's mobile device to a central location, and every officer on the operation can see what all the other officers see, and it does help to inform these agents, what's going on when they're spread out, along in a big crowd or across a big area. And they found it to be very helpful, especially when they're coordinating with other law enforcement agencies who are using the same product. The two can be combined. So it gives them a great tactical awareness of what's going on and what they should be doing, and if something's going on that they should be reacting to. Another good use case for edge computing, as I mentioned before, is putting our detention officers in a facility where they don't speak the same language as some of the detainees. If there's something going on, if a detainee needs help, or if they need to take some kind of action, not being able to communicate with them is very difficult. And we've, working with CBP, we've been able to get a translation service app pushed out to our phones that allows agents and officers to communicate directly with foreign nationals that don't speak English, and to be able to, get some level of communication so they can determine exactly what's going on with with this scenario. So edge computing is very important. The way ERO, or enforcement removal operations, deals with the electronic health record, we're pushing the ability to have our contract force provide information on detainees within the facilities directly to these records where headquarters and other people can access them. So it's extremely helpful. And we're looking forward to, implementing much more of this technology.
Rhett, what are you seeing over at Microsoft in the law enforcement community?
Yeah, so what I've been seeing is certainly, and Alex has touched on this, Rick has as well, but mobility, mobile devices, embracing those. I mean, taking a look 10, 15 years ago, we basically just had phones, and then we had email and maybe chat. And now these phones are so much more powerful, right? So bringing capabilities, leveraging cognitive services for language understanding or maybe video analysis could certainly be put forth, and they are being put forth to great use. Being able to connect back into other services, maybe through a bot or something of that nature. So maybe the officer, just for situational awareness, they could integrate with that bot, speak what they need to get from it. The bot can do searching on the back end and then bring that information directly to the officer is one example. Certainly there's other use cases for, if I take a look at airports, most of the airports today, the boundary of the airport is searched in someone in a vehicle, and they do that throughout the day and right at night too. What if we could take a look at drones? Maybe we could take that video analysis in near real time, identify people or objects like vehicles and that type of thing, and hopefully do that more quickly, reduce the amount of time it takes people to actually get this stuff done. And then bringing capabilities for AI, ML models to really run on any type of hardware or devices. One example is our Azure Stack Edge group of devices, right? We could run advanced analytics, machine learning models at the edge, right? Collect it locally, even in a disconnected state, and have the output. And then when we are connected, bring it back in. There's also, of course, areas that we operate within that are not well connected. So working with satellite providers, in the last year, we've stood up Azure Space and Azure Orbital, working with groups like SpaceX and SES, et cetera, to bring capabilities for our customers to more quickly connect using higher speed satellite internet connections, right, is another great option. And then more broadly, Microsoft as a company, as a provider, we have one of the largest networks in the world. So what if you guys could connect your sites to our closest endpoint and use our backbone for connecting? And then, of course, because it's a high-speed backbone, data sharing can be much easier, right? Taking a look, I've had conversations with groups within DHS that want to work across the Five Eyes, right, and have intelligence sharing across the globe to other organizations. How do you send 5 petabytes of data? In some cases, our customers' networks are not built to handle that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the future. I always like to talk about where do you see things going in the next 2 to 3 years. What are some things that maybe you haven't been able to do today that, gosh, in the next 2-3 years, that's going to be a couple technology cycles. What are those things that are like high on your list of things that you want to get done next? Rick, why don't you start us out about where you see things going at ICE?
Yeah, so I think that as we look to the future at ICE, looking back is where we get our direction, and ICE has had its struggles in how we deliver our technical services to our programs and to our customers. And they really can't get enough of technology quick enough, right? There's always some kind of a hurdle. There's a vulnerability or there's some policy that prevents the agents from doing the things that they really want to do. They've seen other people do it. They've seen DEA do it. They've seen, TSA, CIS, everybody, right? Everybody seems to get to do the things except for the ICE agents. And so I think one of the things that we're really working hard to provide is an ability for them to have more autonomy in adopting whatever technology is out there. And I think that by moving our technical assets to the cloud, there's a really good possibility that we can get that done very quickly. We can put some constraints in there so that they can, adopt whatever technology safely, that they can do it on their own without having somebody from OCIO holding their hands. I think we've already proven this with one or two big initiatives over at ICE with the Raven application and with the TAC application. So we know that they can do it. It's just a matter of ensuring that, can they do it safely, and can we ensure that these new technologies that are coming down the road get funneled into that same area where we can provide it to them in a safe fashion. So I think that that's one of the areas where we really want to empower the agents and the officers and get them the autonomy to do the things that they need to do to carry out the mission.
Alex, how about DEA?
I think that I would say that anywhere where we can reduce dependencies and increase capabilities at the same time. So the best way for me to look at that is sometimes in order to do something, I have to say I have to run and go to a particular area, or I have to go grab a particular device, or there's a specific just a login process that isn't available based off of what I'm currently using. So you're not going to always be in the ideal place to do the successful mission. Some things may happen. We already talked about COVID. We talked about other things that impact mission, but it could be weather, any impacting or thing that impacts your day-to-day activities can be unknown. And in order to basically have the most flexibility, eliminating those dependencies. So does that mean that we take applications that today are only exist on a certain platform and make them mobile accessible? Do we translate how we do those kind of things and development to support low code, no code initiatives that allow us to write one application one time and that it also be available no matter what platform you use? Even if you're talking about what we talked about earlier, the HSPD-12, the PIV requirement. Hey, I have a system that is not PIV enabled or is PIV enabled, but it's tied to only that one machine or a few machines. Either somebody has to wait for it, or if you don't have it, you don't get access to it. So does that mean that we change our modern authentication policies and access to support alternative credentials? Does that mean that we have a different access to a different portal that is accessible no matter what device? Or does it mean that we eventually get to a singular device that can do all of those things? If I need to make a phone call, I can do that. If I need to reach back to a different environment, I can do that from that same device. Can I use it as a body-worn camera? Can I use it for other initiatives? We need multiple uses for less devices or less pieces of hardware. So I think that's a big focus of something that I would want to see in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Alex. I'd like to just kind of go around the horn one more time and say, any parting thoughts before we conclude the panel? Rick?
I would say, I like a lot of the information that Alec has provided, from a law enforcement standpoint. Security is really important, and it is changing. And the more technical things become, the greater that challenge is of making sure that the things that we're doing are secure. Zero trust, it's here, and people are trying to make it work and ensure that they're comfortable with it. And as we move forward, that is definitely an area that I couldn't agree with you more, Alec, that we need to be better about identity and authentication.
Rhett, how about you?
I would say, if we could be more open-minded, especially as we take a look at past policies, what are the opportunities for us moving into the future? Whether it's devices, whether it's applications, access to data, identity, et cetera. There's a tremendous amount of capabilities that we could bring forth today to really modernize how users authenticate and access across different conditions and different device types, with extremely high levels of data protection involved with that as well. Most of my customers today are not really doing data labeling, data classification as they could be. So that's a huge opportunity. And then as we take a look at data and where that data resides, maybe it's in a SQL database or some Oracle database. Maybe it's running or sitting in an S3 bucket. How can we connect to that data? How can we assess that data, sort of catalog it? And then how can we protect it? And then once it's protected, now, okay, how can we enable someone from their personal device to be able to access that data potentially? Under what conditions could we allow that? What controls could we ensure that data cannot flow down to that unmanaged device? There's a tremendous amount of opportunity. So, my recommendation, of course, working with Rick and team and the other DHS components that I support, I'm certainly going to try to push them and challenge them where it makes sense, but also understand, these are the confines that we kind of have to work within. But again, it gets back to trust. Right? If you trust us, if you trust our platform, we certainly can bring a lot to the table. But we want to do that in a mindful way that is able to meet your mission needs. So looking forward to the continued collaboration. So
great, Alex. Parting thoughts.
My parting thoughts will go towards data and time. So for data, is what can we use or what can we do to make or move data into that strategic asset? Is ultimately, I think all of us have been in a situation. We probably have computers where we have 4 or 5 copies of the same file, maybe not all of them, but we do have 4 or 5 copies of the exact same thing in several different places, and then we still don't know where to find it. And ultimately, I think back as I talked to one of our operational agents at DEA. I called and said, hey, I've been here for 15 some years and I've been an agent for 15 years and I still write my notes in my notebook and I put it in my locker. And I said, well, it would be great if eventually when you take notes, if somebody not even a city away or even a state away, you might have something that you both need to share, but they'll never find it if it's in your actual notebook. And that's normal though. That's what people, I've spent some time at other organizations. That's not uncommon. And I think that even state and locals probably have the same thing. That's their tried and true. I use my notebook. It's right there every day. But ultimately, we have to turn that into time management. And time is that if anything ransomware showed us or any of these other initiatives or things that's happened recently, even things dealing with breaches or other types of security events, is that the biggest catastrophe that we have is based off the time it takes to resolve the situation. So if it's the time it takes to respond and recover, that cybersecurity maturity model, those are the areas that we really are going to have to improve in, and data is going to drive it.
Well, I want to say that this panel has been very exciting for me. One, because I clearly got a vision of how you all are both enabling and empowering your mission owners in the law enforcement space. And the second part of that is this vision that I see you guys sharing more information across the community, not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level, so that everybody's got real-time situational awareness. So I want to thank you all for participating in today's panel. And I want to thank the men and women in law enforcement for their hard work and diligence every day in keeping the public safe. And so with that, we'll conclude, and we'll see you next time.